Hey everyone, welcome back. So got the chance to play a brand new game this week that turned out to be pretty good, which is always a welcome surprise. That game is Wildgate. It's an upcoming PvP multiplayer shooter that combines a few different genres and elements into one. The elevator pitch here is it's a squad-based PvP game. You're flying ships through space, collecting loot, getting stronger, and trying to crush your opponents. While surface level, this does look eerily similar to another game I covered recently, Jump Ship. That combined with the not too long ago released game Void Crew means that we've officially got 3 brand new games about piloting ships with friends through space while getting into crazy antics and searching for loot, all launching in a relatively short time frame. How does this happen? I don't have any idea. Either way, the similarities aside, each of these games do have quite a few things that set them apart. So here is the TLDR of what makes Wildgate different. So at its core, this is a PvP focused round-based game. You assemble a crew of 4 players, selecting from a roster of unique characters that each fit different playstyles, and then you are matched into a lobby against 4 other crews of 4 players before launching out into space, where you will all compete in a fight to the death. The game's got some seriously impressive, fast-paced first-person gunplay, which initially you will use while exploring different points of interest, taking on a variety of PvE enemies, and completing events that reward you with weapons and upgrades for your ship. At the same time, the 4 other teams in your lobby are doing the exact same thing. And again, it is full on PvP, so once you inevitably run into the other teams, it is time to fight. And that fighting entails ship-to-ship combat, where you'll be blasting your cannons to take down enemy shields and damage their hull, but also getting into direct FPS fights against the other players as you defend your ship or assault and board theirs. So every match is 20 players with 5 teams of 4, and the win conditions are either to be the last team left standing or to find this special artifact somewhere in the match and escape with it through the Wildgate, and that is the gist of it. Now I will say here, I didn't really have much in the way of expectations going into checking out this game, but after spending the past couple of days playing, I am quite impressed. The game plays exceptionally well with solid gunplay and interesting mechanics. It's got a rather unique combination of elements to it, with quite a variety of points of interest to explore and loot to collect. Most importantly though, it's just been plain fun to play, with super solid gunplay, impressive animations, flawless performance in my experience, and a gameplay loop that's thoroughly enjoyable. I think beyond some balance issues and quality of life improvements that I'd like to see, this is definitely looking like a solid game worth keeping your eye on. Alright, so with that said, let us jump in and take a much closer look at Wildgate, the whole gameplay loop, what it's like playing the game from start to finish, as well as some of my thoughts. Before we do that though, we got a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Nord Current Labs for the upcoming game Chains of Freedom. This is a turn-based tactical adventure set in a dystopian Eastern Europe, where players lead an elite military squad through perilous missions, navigating conspiracy, betrayal, and moral dilemmas. Inspired by the likes of XCOM and Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden, you'll likely see a lot of similarities here. For one, it's turn-based combat, featuring high stakes, which requires you to carefully plan every move, using your squad's unique skills, weapons, and gear to deal with a range of threats. The campaign has you unraveling this complex plot involving a rogue scientist, mind control serums, and a government on the brink of collapse. You'll be exploring this post-apocalyptic Eastern Europe, from abandoned urban landscapes to hidden forest laboratories and fortified military bases, in which, besides taking on enemies, you'll also be collecting loot, finding weapons, unique abilities, and all sorts of helpful consumables. So Chains of Freedom is currently available right now on Steam. If you'd like to learn more and check out the game for yourself, be sure to use our link in the description below. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive into Wildgate. Here is what a typical match looks like from start to finish. So you begin by picking a character, set with your weapon and equipment loadout, and then you will be match made into a team of 4 players. They do have the option to not matchmake with others if you want to go in solo or duo, although I highly recommend filling a team because there's a lot of fires to put out and it seems like a game that's near impossible. Maybe like a really good trio could do it, but if you're playing solo, you're probably screwed. I hope they eventually add like duos queues or anything, but that's another story. So when you do matchmake, you will be grouped with 3 other players before loading into the pre-match lobby. Here, all 5 teams are chilling out in this huge hangar for roughly a minute or so. What this does is it lets you check out out the enemy ships, as there are different types of ships in the game with various strengths and weaknesses, along with the characters and weapons on each of the teams. Also, while in the hangar, you see here what I believe is the game's dynamic event system. So every single match, it's going to have a different list of these modifiers and events or unique points of interest that have been populated for this particular round. This can include things like low altitude fog, powerful artifacts, legion turrets, ancient vaults, thin asteroids, and the list goes on and on. Quite a lot of different variables that can be tossed in here to mix up the matches. Now, after that minute, you get this little cutscene where everyone in your lobby is launched out into space, all spawning at different points in the game's rather substantially sized map. You then get a little panoramic view of your ship's location as well as nearby point of interest before getting control of your character, and now it's time to get to work. So first things first, when you load in, you're always placed right in front of some small point of interest. Now, this game is chock full of these. There are many different types of locations, all of them full of enemies, and having one of an assortment of different possible event types. Whatever you come across, though, the goal is always the same. You go in, kill the enemies, complete whatever the event's objectives are. Doing so then opens up the loot room, and these rooms reward tons of useful items for your ship. This includes things like unique weapons that can be placed on any of your ship's gun mounts, powerful upgrades with these components that provide a wide range of both defensive, offensive, and utility options. There's ammunition for your ship, which is used to fuel any and all guns that you have, along with some utility items, things like bombs you can place on enemy ships, or single-use items that are pretty strong, or propulsion devices that can have you flying out of your ship incredibly fast through space, great for boarding enemy ships or getting to a resource really quickly. So the match begins, you jump into the point of interest that's right in front of you, you complete the objective, you collect the loot, and then you bring that all back to your ship, which has to be done manually. The game does have a teleport back to your ship option, which you can use whenever. So you'll collect a piece of loot, teleport back to your ship, drop it off, and then go back to the point of interest loot room, collect the next piece of loot, teleport back, so on and so on. And then it's time to start making your way around the map and searching for more, because this period of time, you're just trying to get as strong as possible. In these opening like 5-ish minutes, you're trying to get as much power into your ship before you get into the PvP. You want better shields, better defenses, better weapons, a faster turning radius, a quicker speed boost. The list goes on of all the components and upgrades you can get, and that's what your focus is here. And you can only get these upgrades at the points of interest that you go in and clear, or by stealing them off of an enemy ship, but that comes later once you actually get into the PvP. First things first, get your ship as strong as you can. So the start of each match, that is your focus. Go to the points of interest, collect the loot. Some examples of the different kinds of points of interest you're going to come across, whether it's the one you spawn in front of initially or ones you encounter as you go throughout the rest of the match. You've got things like asteroids, where you'll have to go in, kill enemies, repair this mining robot, and then following it as it drills through multiple layers of rocks. Eventually, you go all the way to the end, you protect the robot, the loot room opens up. Or you got a mixture of abandoned spaceships and stations that you'll have to do things like repair panels, clear enemy waves, or destroy these teleporters that are inside. Or, and these are ones to keep an eye out for, these ring gates, these circular gates with two little teleports on either side. These take you into these large pyramid-shaped structures, and this is one of the harder points of interest that we've come across, as you have to clear many waves of rather difficult enemies. They get progressively harder the further into the waves you get. The upshot, though, is this rewards some of the best loot that we've seen, weapons and ship upgrades that are phenomenal. Some of this includes things like these plasma cannons that are incredibly strong, or at one point we found this component for our ship that gave us 30 extra health, as well as healing the ship automatically over time. This one seemed busted as hell. There's also a component where you put it somewhere into your ship and it shoots out this laser that's like a massive chainsaw. So if you put it on the front of your ship and you ram your ship into enemy ships, you've got this chainsaw chugging away at the enemy's health. Look for those ring gates, go into the teleporters, clear those pyramids. You're going to find some awesome loot. So again, there's quite a variety of these. It's also important to note that even when you come across locations you've seen before, they're often going to have different objectives or enemies inside, as they seem to have some random elements here where you can visit the same point of interest structurally multiple times, but you'll come across different combinations of enemies and objectives inside. Also, one big thing that will help you figure out where you should be going are the probes. So every ship has a few stations on board where you interact with them, and it gives you control of a probe that you can fly around through space, moving pretty quickly, but most importantly, spotting and marking any nearby visible structures. You can scan points of interest once you get close enough, and then it's going to tell you and show on your map the rarity of the upgrades that you can expect to find inside. So as you're doing all this other stuff, you want to use your probe, you want to mark the points of interest, and that'll tell you where all the best loot is on your current match. Also, while you're doing this, you're going to want to keep an eye out for two very valuable resources that are found floating in space. These are ice shards and fuel asteroids. Both of these can be harvested and deposited into your ship's processor. The fuel is used every time a pilot decides to speed boost, whether that's to get away from enemies or chase some down. And the ice is for healing your ship whenever it takes damage, and it's going to take a lot of damage once you start getting into PvP. So both of these resources, absolutely vital, and you're always going to want to be collecting them as you're flying around doing everything else. As you're going to points of interest at the start of your match, in the middle of the match, even when you're PvPing, sometimes you're going to need to pick up those resources because you need to heal your ship, and that speed boost is super valuable. Now, generally speaking, as I mentioned earlier, the first 5, 10, or even up to the first 15 minutes of every match, all of this is what you're doing. You're going around to points of interest, you're collecting those upgrades for your ship, as well as storing ammunition, fuel, and ice into your processor. But again, this is a fully PvP centric game. So at any point during this process, you're going to run into other players and you're going to start fighting. There are 4 other teams of 4 players in your lobby, and some matches you might be chilling for a while. You get 10 minutes of point of interest clearing and resource gathering. Other times, you're going to see another team on your tail within the first 2 minutes. It just happens. It's quite variable. You got 5 teams sharing the same map, and sometimes you're going to come across each other very early. And as much as I enjoy the PvE part of this game, and I do think it's well done, I got to say the PvP is where it really shines, which is a good thing because this is a PvP centric game. So ship fights are chaotic, they're frantic, and I think they're just a ton of fun. The goal here is rather simple: destroy the enemy ship. But how you go about that can be done in a few different ways. So at its core, the PvP is a combination of using your ship's weapons to destroy the enemy's shields and then damage their hull. Once the hull gets to 0, the ship explodes. But there's the added component of boarding enemy ships to harass them. And this really ramps up the action because at any point you can leave your ship, fly directly towards the enemies, and get inside. You're wanting to wreak as much havoc as possible and prevent them from damaging your ship. So what this is going to mean is you're going to want to go in, kill any players on board, especially the ones that are manning any mounted guns, so they stop firing against your ship and damaging your core. You want to damage the enemy core by interacting with it to force an override, which basically does a damage over time until they come over and manually disable it. You can also cause literal fires, which will damage the ship until they are put out by the enemy. And probably best of all, you can steal any components, even the weapons that they've acquired from their ship, and bringing it back to your own. So if you come across an enemy ship that has some like legendary super strong gun or upgrade, you can just board their ship and take it, barring you can get it and then get out alive without them killing. Now, what makes all of this harassing of the enemy and stealing their components more difficult is how the spawning system works, because anytime you die, you will spawn back on your ship, and any player you kill respawns shortly after on their ship. So naturally, anyone who's attacking is at a disadvantage, because even though they might be killing a couple of players, they're going to be respawning on their ship shortly after. But if you can get in there, kill a couple of players real quick, and then quickly either override their core or yoink a component, that's a win. However, what you have to keep in mind is all of this can and will be happening to you as well, where other enemy players will be in your ship dishing out as much harm as they can, the same that you're trying to do to the enemy ship. And it's all of these elements coming together that have really made playing this game and the PvP so fun and frustrating at times, admittedly. And then, of course, there's the added twist that there aren't just 2 teams duking it out. There are 5 teams of 4 in every match, all in the same lobby with the same objective to win. And so oftentimes you might be fighting another team wherein a 3rd and a 4th and maybe the 5th one all show up to join the melee. It's all, again, crazy hectic and a lot of fun. So there are 2 win conditions to keep in mind. As mentioned, you're either trying to be the last ship standing with all of their ships destroyed, or you can find the artifact and escape with it through the Wildgate. So this is a portal that becomes active after some duration, represented by this percentage meter filling over the course of the match. This looks to take, in my experience, roughly 20 to 25-ish minutes, although not exactly sure. Also, I will say, because it is a percentage and not a simple countdown timer until the Wildgate opens, I would assume here that there are some factors that could either speed up how quickly the Wildgate opens or slow it down. But again, just a guess, I'm not certain. But yeah, man, all of that crazy PvP action will often include multiple ships of teams all fighting each other simultaneously, and it just resulted in really hectic, fun, over-the-top action. This is a PvP experience that I've really enjoyed. So that is a basic look at what it's like playing this game. Now I want to run through some of the systems, features, mechanics, and that stuff. Starting with the characters. As mentioned, there are different character classes to choose from. Each of these come with their own perks that, for the most part, will play into certain roles and play styles. So first you got Venture. He is a explorer. He doesn't need oxygen, will regen health faster outside of a ship, and automatically recharges his weapons and equipment whenever teleporting back to the ship. Samo is a ship defender with 20% more health, and then while on your ship, he will heal to 100% whenever he kills an enemy, and he can see enemy players through walls up to 30 meters. Ion is a boarder. His melee attacks will damage ship parts. He's got 2x melee damage. His melee attack will even one-shot other players, and he automatically reloads any stowed weapons. Moths is also a boarder who will turn invisible whenever outside enemy ships. He flies 30% faster than anyone else, but as a drawback for those advantages, he has 20% less health. And then finally, Sal is an engineer, also good for being on your own ships. He's got the multi-tool that will heal multiple targets at once. He can salvage items in the ship processor, and has 20% more health, as well as no vulnerable location, i.e. he won't receive headshots. Now there are 2 additional classes that are in the works, although none of their details or info have been revealed as of this moment. So yeah, it's basically the case that you will want to pick a character that best fits whatever role you want to fill. So if you're someone who likes to stay on your ship, flying, manning the turrets, and repairing things, both Sal and Samo are good options. Whereas if you would like to leave your ship and try to get in a lot of FPS fights against the enemy and wreak havoc on their ship, Moths and Ion will be your best choices. And Venture is sort of just a solid all-arounder, but he does have passives that let him focus on staying out of the ship, floating through space for a long time, which can be good for either attacking the enemy or points of interest clearing or even resource gathering. The pre-match loadout system looks like this. You've got 2 weapon slots to choose from. Now you start with access to a rifle, an auto pistol, and a sniper, as well as a heal ray, but then you can also unlock things like the sonic cannon, the rocket launcher, the pistol, the blaster, and the goo gun. For equipment, this is a range of devices, throwables, offensive and defensive tools. So this includes grenades, Molotovs, attack and repair drones, personal shields, deployable shields, bear traps, speed boost, and quite a few more options. All sorts of different variety here. And then lastly, you've got the preferred ships. So there are 4 different ship types in the game, and each of them are some different combination of the ship health, speed, the number of gun mounts, along with some passive perks for each of them. So Hunter is the starting ship. It's referred to as a gunship, and it has faster shields down speed, which lets you toggle from having your shields up for defensive maneuvers or dropping them, which lets you increase your speed. This ship can do it faster than others. Privateer is a battleship with projectiles that fire at 2 times velocity to other ships. Bastion is a secure ship that has heavy security, which will warn teams of enemy players inside. And then finally, Scout is referred to as a fast ship. It has increased max speed, turn speed, and boost duration. Now, when it comes to progression, essentially how this works is you pick a progression path. Each path is kind of themed around one particular playable character. So every track has you actually unlocking that character as the very first reward, which you get pretty easily. Like after a single game, you'll unlock the character. But then beyond that, any further progression in that track unlocks cosmetics, yes, but also access to the game's various weapons, equipment, and even those ship unlocks. So really what you want to do whenever you pick the adventure track you want to progress playing through the game, you just pick the one that has the character you like the most first, and then once you unlock the character, you can then swap to the ones that have have the ship, weapons, and equipment upgrades. So for example, I wanted to unlock moths so that I could do a little boarding in the game. So I played a single game, I got the character, but then beyond that, there were weapon and equipment upgrades that I wanted from Ion's track, so I swapped to him. And this works just, the whole adventure progression, it works almost exactly like a battle pass, but it's not a battle pass. It's just you pick a track that you want with the rewards that you want. You stay on that track, you earn experience by playing the game, and that gives you unlocks along the way. All right, so that is the basic overview of the game. Now I want to go over some of my impressions after playing a few days, starting with the good, the pros. What do I like? First, right out the bat, top-notch quality here. The combat feels fantastic. We got excellent gunplay, like really, really impressive stuff. Every weapon that I've tried feels great. I was actually quite surprised by how good the gunplay feels, coupled with some also exceptional animation quality and details, which was actually one of the first things that stood out to me when I started playing. This is just a very polished and good looking and feeling game. I think this is likely a carryover from the developer's Blizzard lineage, which, if you weren't aware, Wildgate is being developed by Dreamhaven, a studio founded by ex-Blizzard founder Mike Morhaime, and honestly, I think it shows. They've definitely carried some of that polished philosophy over here. Not sure what kind of budget went into funding this thing, but the quality coming out of it is very, very impressive. Also in that same vein, I will add that the game performed flawlessly for me, as well as my editor Liam. I don't think I noticed a single frame drop in the past few days of playing. Looks great, feels good to play, and runs smooth as butter. Super impressed across the board here. Also, the gameplay loop, I think it's really good. Every aspect of playing this game has been a lot of fun. With the quality gunplay, even just going around clearing out the points of interest to collect the ship upgrades is enjoyable. In fact, were this just a PvE focused co-op game, I think I would enjoy it. But then you have the whole added layer of PvP, which is where things really get ramped up. It makes it so good. If you enjoy PvP at all, this is a great take on a multiplayer competitive formula. Like, you'll be approaching an enemy ship, one person flying the ship, managing your orientation to line up the guns, then dropping the shield for a moment to pick up speed and get a better angle. The rest of your team at the same time is on the turrets, just starting unleashing volleys, tearing through their shields, then damaging their ship hull. The pilot keeps on flying, you know, circling into position, and then one or two of you jump out, flying towards the enemy ship to begin a counterattack. You board the ship, you take out their gunners so that they stop attacking your ship, giving it time to repair, and then before everyone respawns, you overload their ship core, or maybe you steal and damage a component, or then you teleport back to your ship, or hang around outside of the enemy ship to harass them again after they respawn. And then at the same time, back on your ship, the gunners are unloading, but then you get boarded, so your pilot lets go of the controls using his wall hacks, if he's playing a Samo, to find the enemy and take them out. Then he puts out a few fires with his multi-tool, while someone else is who overrides the overload on your ship core, and then deposits some ice into it to start healing your ship. And then while this is happening, you stayed on the enemy ship, and like you're using a rocket to blast a massive hole into the cockpit glass, causing the enemy ship to start leaking oxygen, and then one of the enemies heads over to repair the leak, but you shoot them through the hole in the glass, killing them so the oxygen keeps pouring out. During PvP, this entire cacophony of events is happening non-stop the entire time. Two ships are fighting, but then, as mentioned, a third ship might all of a sudden roll in, and then you have to juggle dealing with them as well. It's just it's a freaking blast, dude. Honestly, the PvP in this game is great. There's a lot to juggle, tons of fires to put out, literal and figurative ones, and with some great FPS gunplay. Yeah, it's just a good time. It's a really good time. And then lastly, in the positives, I want to say that I like how they have a lot of variety for different play styles. So depending on the character and loadout selection, like I mentioned, you're going to be better suited to one of three primary things for the most part. It either means you want to play as someone who's aggressive, boarding the enemy ship, or playing as someone who stays on your ship, defending it from enemy players, as well as putting out fires, steering and shooting the cannons. Or maybe you want to play as someone who's focused on going out, gathering resources, and clearing points of interest easier. There's just options for every role and each of these three main playstyles. There's things here for people who don't want non-stop FPS action, because you have to fly the ship, you have to put out the fires, you have to man the cannons. But the people who just want PvP, they'll be probably boarding the enemies and or focused on defending their ship. I think that's a great mix. All right, now let's move on to some of the areas for improvements or cons that from my initial impressions. Starting with saying that I feel like there's some movement options missing. Like, I think the gunplay is top notch, but there's a few noticeable noticeable exclusions that I've been wanting. In particular, the game has no crouching, no dashing, or no sliding. Now, the last two I can live without. Like, I don't need dashing and sliding necessarily, but I will say the lack of crouching has felt especially odd. I just keep trying to do it every time I play the game, especially when it comes to things like peaking elevations and trying to duck behind cover or going behind a protective barrier. I am continuously trying to crouch, but crouch is not in the game, so that's a note. Also, the ship controls. I just don't think flying ships feels particularly great. I've gotten more and more used to it. I happen to actually be flying most of the matches that we've played, but the actual flight controls and the speed of the ship, I just don't love how it feels. I will also say of the speed, even while you are boosting with your shields down, which lets you go faster, it still feels like it barely crawls. Like, the ship just moves incredibly slow even when you're going as fast as you possibly can. Now, I'll say both the lack of crouching in the game as well as the ship's speed and controls, these are all obviously deliberate design decisions, but nevertheless, they are just things that stuck out to me in these first few days that I thought were worth mentioning that I didn't think felt great. And then lastly, I wanted to say this isn't really a critique of the game's design, this last point, but I have to point out that being a team-focused PvP game, it is 100% the case that playing with randoms can absolutely suck. Getting on a team with people who don't know what they're doing has already been a nightmare for us. Now, this is pretty much the case in any team-based multiplayer game, but it seems a little amplified here because you throw in having the ship and the importance of using your weapons in ship-to-ship combat. And those things make having bad or trolly teammates that much worse. So here's a good example. We have had multiple matches where one of our random teammates kept flying the ship away from points of interest that we were in the process of clearing. And this is a problem because it meant that we couldn't take out all but one reward from the loot room with us. Most loot rooms would have like 8 to 10 reward items that you would want to transfer to and from your ship, but we couldn't do it because they were flying the ship away. After we clear the point of interest, we go to the loot room, we pick up one of the rewards, we teleport back to the ship, then the ship is too far away from the point of interest to us to go back to the loot room and keep collecting it. And what this meant is we would constantly be missing out on like 70% of the items that we could have had, the weapons, the ammo, and the ship upgrades from all the loot rooms at the start of a match. And this is a massive disadvantage. There's just too much coordination that's needed with the fact that the ship can fly and people flying ships away from a room full of loot that you can no longer transfer as a result. And then that's even made worse when it comes to the ship combat because it's all about balancing the flying of your ship and trying to maximize the amount of time you can attack the enemy while minimizing the angles in which your ship can be struck, moving the ship up and down and around obstacles, dropping the shield to boost, applying the actual manual boost. So first you've got the maneuverability, but then there's also the fact that the number one way and fastest way to destroy an enemy ship is by using your ship's weapons to attack them directly. You're not really doing a ton of damage when you're boarding the enemy ship. That's mostly to cause havoc and do a little bit of bonus damage. The main bulk of the damage comes from shooting your guns. So if you have a teammate who grabs the wheel and is just constantly putting you in a poor position, or you have a crew who's not manning the turrets, you're just SOL. Like, you're not going to win those matches if you get teammates who really don't know what's going on. Point being, you're just going to want to play this game with friends who can coordinate. Otherwise, you are bound to get on teams that basically you have just no way of winning. This isn't really a game where you can solo carry. Even if you're like the best FPS player in the world, killing enemy players isn't enough for you to win because you can't simultaneously fly your ship properly to keep it defended and put it in good position to attack the enemy. You cannot solo man and shoot the 4 to 6 turrets on your ship. You can't put out all the fires and repair all the broken components, and you can't do that while also boarding and attacking the enemy ship to disrupt them and prevent them from attacking you. All of these things are equally important, and no single player can manage to do it all. So again, if you're playing with bad teammates, or worse, you're playing with trolley teammates, if you get matched with someone who just keeps flying your ship into the ether, you can't kick them off the ship if they grab the controls and they fly you like onto the edge of the map. That's again not the fault of the game. It's the case in any multiplayer team-based game, but it seems especially amplified here given the nature of the ship, flying the ship, and all the things that need to be handled. However, even with those cons in mind, as I mentioned at the top, I am really impressed with Wildgate. 100% think this is a very quality game, and it's been a ton of fun. Now, I don't think this is a game you can play solo because of the reasons that I just mentioned, I can foresee this being incredibly frustrating. It is one thing to be a strictly like a frag-based FPS game with a bad team, but literally just having one bad teammate in this game can drop your odds of winning to 0, let alone if you get someone trolling. Like I said, like all it would take is one player to get in the pilot seat, fly you off the map, and that's GG. Your round is over. That's it. There's literally nothing you can do. You can't kick them out of the pilot ship. That's not an option. So yes, play with friends, or if you don't, just pray that you get decent teammates. And to be fair, a lot of the times I got great teammates, but the handful of times you got terrible teammates, it was really obvious and very frustrating. But when it works, yes, it is exceptional. Like if you have 3 friends who are interested and you enjoy PvP, this is an easy recommendation from what I've seen so far. Really impressed with what they managed to put together overall. So as of now, Wildgate is set to release at some point in 2025. We have no set release window, not even a quarter as of yet. I do suspect that they're probably going to have some additional public testing in the future where they're going to open it up a little bit more. So my money is on you having the chance to try this game out before it releases for free. So I would suggest doing so. Yeah, but I like it. PvP multiplayer game, really super polished, interesting twist, even with its similarities to Jump Ship. It's got its own focus, especially obviously with the PvP. Jump Ship doesn't have PvP, but I just think it's so funny. Like there's literally 3 games, Void Crew, Jump Ship, and now Wildgate, that are all about multiple people flying a ship through space and doing space crazy antics together. I just, again, what are the odds? I've never seen this genre before, and now we got 3 of them within like a couple of years. But anyways, that does it for today. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed this look at Wildgate, and yeah, I'll keep you posted. I'll probably play this more and cover this again in the future, but that's all for now. See you next time. Take it easy.